Welcome to the Deep Dive. We dig into complex topics so you don't have to. Today, we're tackling myth. Now, for a lot of people, that word myth just means, well, something false, right? Like a story that's just not true. But what if that's missing the point entirely? We're diving into Karen Armstrong's A Short History of Myth to really challenge that idea.
Yeah, that common idea, myth equals falsehood. Armstrong goes right at it head on. She argues myths are, universal, they're timeless, and crucially, they're functional. They do something. They're not just old stories. They're actually essential for being human, giving meaning, guidance, helping us wrestle with the big stuff. So our mission today really is to uncover this enduring power of myth, tracing it all the way from our earliest ancestors right up to, today.
It's quite a journey she takes us on. And it starts somewhere pretty surprising, not with old texts, but Neanderthal graves. And we're talking really early humans. And archaeologists find these graves with weapons, tools, even sacrificed animals. So that about.
It suggests something profound. A shift in thinking, this grappling with death, with mortality, that really sets humans apart. It shows we're fundamentally, meaning-seeking creatures. We don't just live and die like other animals. We worry about it. We need life to have value.
And we invented stories to deal with that.
Exactly. And those graves, Armstrong says, they show us 5 really important things about myth right from the start. 1, myth is almost always born from facing death, that fear of extinction. 2, it's tied to ritual, those animal bones, that sacrifice. Action brings the myth alive.
Right, not just words.
3, myth deals with the extreme, the unknown. It pushes you to the edge of human experience. 4, it's not just a story to listen to. It's a guide for how to act, a kind of spiritual or psychological posture. Think about a body buried in a fetal position that implies rebirth, right? It maybe tells you how to get there.
A lot of instruction.
Sort of. And 5th, myth always points to another reality, an invisible, more powerful one. The perennial philosophy, some call it. A divine world behind ours, where our reality is like a shadow of these archetypes. But crucially, back then, gods weren't usually seen as separate beings like we might think. They were in the world, the storm, the sea, powerful emotions. Mythology was about human experience, really, not just theology.
Which is so different from how we use the word myth today. If you call something a myth, you're basically saying, that's not true. End of story.
Precisely. But for pre-modern people, a myth wasn't just something that happened once long ago. It had happened once, but which also happened all the time.
Happening now.
Yes. It points beyond history, beyond the specific event, to something timeless in being human.
So its truth isn't about facts.
Not factual information, no. A myth, Armstrong argues, is true because it is effective. Does it work? Does it give you insight? Does it change how you see things, how you live? That's its truth. It's like learning the rules of a game. They don't make sense until you actually play. And myth was kind of an early psychology, too, mapping the human mind. That's why Freud and Jung kept going back to Greek myths, They saw deep truths about us reflected there.
Makes sense.
And very important, there's never just one official version of a myth. It changes, adapts to new times. That's how it stays true and relevant.
Okay, let's wind the clock back even further. Palaeolithic times, hunter-gatherers. What did myth mean for them, living day to day? Armstrong says it was as vital as, their spear-throwing technique.
Absolutely essential. It gave structure and meaning to a pretty terrifying world. Think about the Australian Aboriginal Dreamtime. It's not the past, it's like an everyone, a constant parallel reality, more real than this one, filled with ancestor spirits. So hunting isn't just getting food, it's a sacred act connecting you to that dreamtime.
Wow.
And you see this almost everywhere, the myth of a lost paradise. A golden age. Not history, but this deep ache for harmony with the divine, something we feel we've lost but is just out of reach.
A fundamental human feeling.
Exactly. And for these Paleolithic people, nothing was just ordinary. Nothing was profane. A rock, a tree, the moon. It was also its divine counterpart. It embodied the sacred. The Greeks had a word, symbolon, to throw together. Seeing one thing, you saw both the earthly and the divine.
That's an amazing way to experience the world. Armstrong points to the sky as maybe the very first inkling of the divine, just looking up.
Yeah, imagine it. Inconceivably immense, inaccessible, and eternal. It hits you. Rudolf Otto called that feeling mysterium tremendum, terribile et fascinum.
Meaning?
A mystery that's terrifying, awe-inspiring, and fascinating all at once. And that early worship, it seems, wasn't about asking for stuff, just awe, pure awareness. And
Yeah.
often you had a high god or sky god figure, the creator. But interestingly, these sky gods often got, well, demoted, like Uranus in Greek myth, castrated by his son Kronos, because they became too distant, too transcendent, too absent from their daily lives. Myth needs to connect to us, to human concerns, to stay alive. Though height itself, mountains flying that remain a powerful symbol of reaching for the divine.
And connecting to that divine world, you had the shaman,
Yeah.
the key religious figure in hunting societies.
Right. Masters of ecstasy, trance. They'd undertake these spiritual journeys, leave their bodies, talk to gods, travel to other realms.
Like those figures in cave paintings. Bird masks, maybe suggesting flight or going down into the earth.
Exactly. It's often a journey through death to find new life, like the hunter's own dangerous quest. And animals weren't seen as lesser beings. They had superior wisdom, maybe from that lost golden age when humans and animals could talk.
But humans also hunted them, killed them.
Yes. Homo nicens, man the killer. There's a deep conflict there, a psychological ambivalence. Guilt, maybe, for killing these beings they felt related to. So rituals, sacrifice ways to cope, reconstructing the animal symbolically perhaps, giving it new life. Mythology often grows out of these really practical but deeply troubling anxieties.
So you have logos, the practical brain, figuring out how to hunt, make tools, and mythos, the way of thinking that helps you deal with the fear, the grief, the meaning of it all.
They work together, complementary.
And those caves weren't just art galleries. They were maybe sites for initiation rites. Young men facing symbolic death and rebirth.
Very likely. A transformation. Breaking down the old self, becoming an adult member of the tribe. And myths would be told in these intense sacred settings, not just to entertain, but to change you.
Okay.
And out of all this, the hunter, the shaman, the initiate, comes the universal myth of the hero. Every culture has it. The hero leaves home, faces terrible trials, dies to his old self, overcomes death in some way, and brings back a gift, a boon for the community. Prometheus, Buddha, Jesus.
It applies to everyone.
Armstrong says yes. Every single one of us has to be a hero at some time in our lives. You have to go down before you can come up. Descent precedes ascent.
And alongside the hero, you also get the great goddess figure.
Yes, often quite fearsome, like Artemis, mistress of animals, demanding sacrifice. Those ancient pregnant figurines suggest her power. Armstrong speculates maybe her dominance, even in male-led hunting groups, reflected an unconscious understanding that female continuity birth demanded constant male sacrifice in the hunt.
Fascinating. Okay, let's move forward. Neolithic period. Farming starts around 10,000 years ago. A massive shift. How did that change mythology?
Profoundly. It was a whole new spiritual orientation. Farming wasn't just work. It became a sacred act. Tilling the soil, planting the seed, harvesting, all done with ritual care. Seeing a seed die in the dark earth and then burst into life, that was an epiphany, a direct glimpse of divine power.
The earth becomes central.
Absolutely. The earth as the living womb. And rituals were vital to keep that power flowing. Offerings, first fruits left unpicked, sometimes even human sacrifice, sadly. It was a holistic view, gods, humans, animals, plants, all part of one cycle.
And lots of sexual imagery.
Oh yes, harvest as a hierogamy, a sacred marriage, soil as female, the seed, divine semen, rain as like intercourse, ritual sex was sometimes part of it. Even the farmer's tools could be seen as a sacred phallus.
And the earth itself takes on this motherly role. Creation myths about humans coming from the earth.
Right, so instead of ascending to the sky god, the focus shifts to connecting with the sacred in the earth. Think of Neolithic labyrinths, like entering the womb of Mother Earth, similar to those Paleolithic caves.
The goddess becomes more specific.
More concrete, yes. Figures like Inanna in Sumer, Isis in Egypt, Demeter in Greece. But they often keep those scary, powerful aspects of the earlier great myth. Anat in Canaan, for example, is terrifyingly violent. Myth wasn't escapism, remember?
Because farming was hard.
A constant battle against drought, blight, failure. Armstrong even suggests the Genesis fall story reflects the sorrow and toil of agriculture. There's violence inherent in it. The seed has to die. Farming tools are like weapons against the earth.
And this reflects in the myths of the goddess's consort, the male figure.
Yes. Figures like Baal, Osiris, Dumuzi, they are often torn apart, dismembered, brutally mutilated, and killed before they can rise again with the crops. It's a cycle of death and resurrection mirroring the agricultural year. And sometimes the goddess is the hero who searches for the dead god, like Anat searching for Baal or Isis for Osiris.
Armstrong details the myth of An and Mot, the god of death and sterility. It's incredibly brutal.
It is a desperate struggle. Bal surrenders. Anna is grief-stricken but then enraged. She attacks Mott, cleaves him, winnows him, burns him, grinds him, sows him exactly like a farmer cheating grain.
But it's not a final victory.
No. Death always returns. The battle goes on. Same with Inanna's descent to the underworld. She goes down, is stripped bare, meets her terrifying sister Ereshkigal, maybe ultimate reality, and is sentenced to death.
But she returns.
She does, but at a cost. Her return requires her consort Dumuzi to take her place for half the year. That explains the seasons. Again, no final victory over death, just this endless cycle.
So things like the Eleusinian mysteries in Greece, about Demeter and Persephone, not just a simple story about spring.
Far from it. The rituals, which were secret, seem to have focused on forcing initiates to accept the inevitability of death as an essential part of life. To lose the fear of death, it was about spiritual transformation, a kind of human pruning, allowing you to live more fully, more intensely, because death no longer held that terror. It's about changing your relationship to death.
Powerful stuff. Okay, next big shift. Cities. Early civilizations, Mesopotamia, Egypt. Writing, big buildings, more control. Exciting, but scary too.
Definitely both. Pride in achievement, but also fragility. Armstrong says history is a process of annihilation. Think of Mesopotamian cities built of mud brick, always decaying, needing renewal. City-states fought each other. Order versus chaos was a constant theme.
The Bible seems quite down on cities. Cain, the murderer, builds the first one, Tower of Babel.
Yeah, the biblical writers saw civilization as potentially disastrous, maybe linked to pagan hubris. But the Mesopotamians themselves, they saw the city as sacred, an axis mundi connecting heaven and earth. The ziggurat temple tower replaced the old cosmic mountain. Gods lived in the city temples. Cultural achievements were seen as divine gifts.
But the gods seem further away now.
More distant, yes. Human actions took center stage. Look at the flood myths, like the Epic of Atrahasis. The gods send the flood partly because humans are too noisy, they withdraw. But crucially, it's human technology, Atrahasis building the boat, that saves the day. The focus is shifting.
And creation myths reflect this city focus, like the Babylonian Enuma Elish.
Absolutely. It shows this evolutionary process from chaos, sloppy, undefined substance to order. The god Marduk defeats the chaotic sea monster Tiamat, creates the cosmos from her body, and founds Babylon. Humans are made from divine blood and dust to serve the gods. The city is the center of the cosmos, the gate of the gods. And creation isn't a one-off event, it's ongoing. That battle against chaos continues, and humans have to participate through rituals like the huge New Year festival to keep the world going. These rituals were therapeutic.
And creation often involves sacrifice.
Yes, this idea that true creativity requires giving something up, even self-sacrifice. Purusha in India, Pangu in China, Tiamat in Babylon creation comes from the body of a sacrificed primordial being.
Let's talk Gilgamesh. He was a real king, right? But becomes a mythic figure.
He was, and his epic shows the gods becoming even more distant, often acting through intermediaries like the wild man in Enkidu.
Enkidu's story is fascinating. Tamed by a temple prostitute, loses his connection to nature, becomes civilized.
Right, he's sort of diminished in one way, but also becomes more profound, like a god in understanding. But civilization cuts him off from something vital.
And Gilgamesh himself rejects the goddess Ishtar. That seems huge.
It's a powerful critique of the traditional mythology. He declares independence from these often destructive gods. His quest for immortality fails, but he finds wisdom through human experience, suffering, and reflection, not divine help.
His immortality becomes building the city walls.
Yeah.
Writing it down.
Exactly. Focusing on human achievement, human culture. He loses his divine illusions but gains complete wisdom about being human.
Feels like the old ways are fading, a kind of spiritual gap opening up.
Precisely. The old rituals, the old stories, they aren't quite working the same way, which sets the stage for the Axial Age.
Okay, the Axial Age. Karl Jasper's term, roughly 800 to 200 BCE. A pivotal time, happening independently across the world. China, India, Persia, Israel, Greece. What was going on?
It's when religion, as we mostly know it today, was born. Common factors emerge everywhere. A deep awareness of human suffering. A feeling that religion needed to be more internal, spiritual, less about external ritual sacrifice. Big focus on individual conscience, morality, and crucially, compassion. Justice becomes central. Sages urged people to look within, question everything. Don't just rely on priests.
So what happened in mythology?
It wasn't discarded, but it was reevaluated, reinterpreted, often given ethical or psychological meanings. The old gods seemed more remote, so transcendence became harder work. Think of Buddhist yoga, Jain asceticism. Anthropomorphic gods felt less plausible to many.
China seems a bit different, less focus on big gods.
Right, in the high culture, ancestor worship was more central, but they had Tian, the sky god, who became very ethical. The king ruled by the mandate of Tian. Confucius emphasized Orn humaneness, the golden rule, and saw ritual and music as ways to cultivate inner harmony and transcend the ego through yielding. Mythical heroes like Yao and Shun embodied these virtues.
And Laozi looked back to a simpler agrarian past.
Yes. The Tao Te Ching uses old myths, often about the mother goddess, to point towards the Tao, the ineffable source of everything, which promotes compassion.
Meanwhile, in Israel, a very different vibe.
Very different. The prophets Hosea, Jeremiah, Ezekiel launched this radical revision, almost a polemic, against the old myths of gods like Baal and Asherah. They found them totally incompatible with their vision of Yahweh, one God, transcendent, ethical, demanding justice. There's a real sense of distress, radical discontinuity.
But didn't the Babylonian exile, ironically, strengthen Judaism?
It did. It led to this serene confidence. Look at Genesis 1, written during or after the exile. It's this calm, ordered response to the chaotic Babylonian myths. Yahweh creates effortlessly, speaks things into being, rests. It's a powerful counter-myth. But interestingly, Israelites still used older mythical patterns when it suited them. The Exodus story, crossing the Sea of Reeds, that draws on ancient combat myths. Second Isaiah links God's primordial actions to current events. Myth remained a tool.
In Greece, the birthplace of Logos, reason.
Exactly. The axial age there was fueled by systematic inquiry, seeking objective truth. Early philosophers tried to find rational explanations for the cosmos. Xenophanes famously mocked the idea of gods looking like humans.
What about tragedy? Aeschylus, Sophocles, Euripides, they use the old myths constantly.
Yes, they solemnly reenacted the ancient myths, but they also put them under intense scrutiny. The gods themselves are often on trial. Are they just? Are they reliable? There are no easy answers for heroes like Oedipus.
Tragedy is a kind of ritual.
A public ritual, yes. Moving from private sorrow to shared experience. Aristotle's idea of catharsis purification may be releasing pity and fear, and through feeling the hero's pain, the audience learned that axial compassion.
Yet Plato and Aristotle weren't big fans of myth or tragedy. They preferred logos.
They did. There seemed to be this growing rift between mythos and logos, which had been partners before, but Armstrong points out the contradiction. Plato still used myths, plausible fables, when philosophy reached its limits, talking about the soul, reincarnation. Aristotle admitted the old traditions had a truly divine basis, and Greek popular religion carried on with its pagan ways despite the philosophers.
So, after the axial age,
Yeah.
we entered the post-axial period. We're still living with those axial insights, mostly. But the Western monotheisms, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, added something new, claiming historical events as their foundation. How does history become myth?
That's a key question. Take Christianity. Jesus was clearly a historical figure, but Armstrong argues St. Paul transformed Jesus into a mythical figure. His death and resurrection weren't just historical events, they became a mystery derived from the Greek mythos, an initiation, an ascent to a divine state. Rituals like baptism let believers participate in that myth, make it a living reality through ethical action.
And Islam?
The Quran calls its verses ayah, meaning sign, parable, similitude. Reciting the Quran in a sacred context, living ethically, that's how you unlock its deeper, mythical significance.
Mysticism in all three faiths seems to draw heavily on myth.
Absolutely. Mystics used mythic language, often the hero's quest narrative, to describe these incredibly intense, obscure, and ineffable inner journeys towards the divine. Look at Jewish Kabbalah. Fascinatingly, some Kabbalists imagined God evolving through stages, the Sephiro emerging from the infinite Ein Sof, not so different structurally from the Enuma Elish. They even developed the idea of the Shekinah, a female aspect of God, exiled in the world, yearning for return echoes of Anat searching for Baal.
And they created new myths, too, after being expelled from Spain.
Yes, Isaac Luria developed this incredible new creation myth involving cosmic breakage, divine sparks trapped in matter, a flawed creation. It gave profound spiritual meaning to their own historical trauma and exile. It shows how myth responds to history.
Christianity had Augustine reinterpreting Adam and Eve.
Into the myth of original sin, which isn't explicitly biblical in that form. He linked it to his own struggles, reason being dragged down by a chaos of sensations, perhaps reflecting the chaos of Rome's decline around him. Myth explaining the present.
And Islamic mysticism.
Muhammad's own mystical ascent to God's throne became the archetype for the Sufi path of surrender. And for Shia Muslims, the hidden imam became this powerful symbolic presence, offering hope in a turbulent world, liberating them from the despair of history.
But that split between mythos and logos in Greece, it caused problems in the West.
And uneasiness, yes. When Greek philosophy was rediscovered, especially in Islam, some thinkers, the philosophers, tried to rationalize religion, strip away the mythical elements they saw as primitive.
Does it work?
Not really for most people. It remained a minority pursuit. Why? Because a purely philosophical God, a first cause, well, it took no notice of mundane events. It offered no comfort, no meaning for everyday struggles. As the Greek Orthodox Christians basically said, trying to use reason alone for sacred matters was like trying to eat soup with a fork. Pointless.
So eventually they found a balance again.
In Judaism and Islam, yes, mostly. A return to the complementarity of mythology and reason. Logos was essential for science, medicine, practical life. Mythos was essential for ultimate meaning, for dealing with despair, for exploring inner regions of the soul. You needed both.
Until the Great Western Transformation. Roughly 1500 to 2000, science, technology, rationality take over, an amazing civilization. But Armstrong says it had a potentially disastrous side effect, the death of mythology.
It really was unprecedented. The absolute triumph of logos. Efficiency, proof, empirical evidence became the only valid ways of knowing. The scientist, the inventor, they became the new cultural heroes.
And the cost.
A massive neglect, even contempt for intuitive mythical modes of thought. Many people literally lost all sense of what it was or why it mattered. And here's the crunch. Logos had never been able to provide human beings with the sense of significance that they seemed to require. So when myth was discredited, you got this deep, numbing despair, a mental paralysis underneath the surface of progress.
The Reformation played a part, changing how people experienced ritual.
Yes. The Eucharist, for Protestants, became only a symbol, not a mystical participation. Reading scripture became a solitary, intellectual, factual exercise, not a communal, transformative ritual.
Science seemed to push myth further away. Copernicus, Newton.
Copernicus made humans seem peripheral, cosmically. Bacon championed science's independence. Newton, a brilliant scientist, actually tried to purge Christianity of illogical doctrines like the Trinity, completely missing its mythical function. He saw it as bad logos, not potent mythos. You get figures like Pascal expressing sheer horror at the eternal silence of space, feeling lost in this corner of the universe. The meaning was draining away.
And ironically, the Age of Reason had bursts of intense irrationality, like the witch craze.
Exactly. When mythos is suppressed, unconscious fears can erupt in distorted, dangerous ways, often rationalized as fact.
Then the 19th century. Feuerbach, Marx see religion as harmful illusion. Darwin arrives.
And the origin of species causes uproar, largely because people insisted on reading Genesis literally, as though they were factual. Armstrong calls this bad science and bad religion. They'd forgotten how myth works.
Biblical scholarship itself then showed the Bible wasn't literal history.
Right. The higher criticism revealed the composite nature, the different layers, the clear mythical elements. But in the popular mind, myth now firmly meant not true.
The split was complete.
It seems so. T.H. Huxley basically said, pick one, science or myth. Nietzsche declared God was dead. Not literally, but the sense of the sacred, nourished by myth and ritual, was dying in Western culture. His madman parable sees humanity adrift, straying as though through an infinite nothingness.
And the 20th century delivered horrors.
Titanic, World War I, Auschwitz, Hiroshima, 9/11, nihilistic icons. Rational, educated societies committed unbelievable barbarism. And without a living mythology to help process death, suffering, evil, these traumas remained unresolved, festering.
Armstrong's conclusion is stark. Materially, we're advanced, but spiritually, we may even have regressed since the axial age because we suppressed mythos.
Yeah. That modern ache to get beyond the ordinary through intense art, music, drugs, celebrity worship shows the need is still there. But often it's unbalanced, maybe even destructive, because it lacks the framework, the guidance, the transformative power of coherent myth.
So where does that leave us? Is myth gone for good?
No, Armstrong argues vehemently against that. The first step is critical. We have to shake off that 19th century fallacy that myth is false. We can't help it. We are myth-making creatures. But we need to be careful. There are plenty of destructive modern myths around racial myths, nationalistic myths, purely egotistical ones. They fail the axial test. They lack compassion. They lack respect for the sacredness of all life. Logos alone can't fight those deep-seated fears and hatreds.
We need better myths.
We desperately need new or renewed myths that foster empathy, connection with all beings, a spiritual attitude, a reverence for the earth itself as sacred. It requires nothing less than a spiritual revolution.
And who's creating these myths today? Armstrong suggests it's not primarily religious leaders anymore,
No, she points to writers and artists stepping into that gap.
like T.S. Eliot, The Wasteland.
Exactly. Published in 1922, depicting this post-WWI spiritual disintegration, a heap of broken images. But Eliot uses fragments of ancient myths, the Fisher King, the Grail quest, precisely to try and find some pattern, some way to reclaim the wasteland, to find meaning in the wreckage.
And Picasso's Guernica.
A powerful, modern, secular crucifixion scene from 1937. It's suffused with compassion for the victims, human and animal, of modern technological warfare. The silent scream of the mother, it echoes Paleolithic sacrifice, that guilt over killing. The bull may be representing brutality, but also a sacrificial victim itself, perhaps foreshadowing a self-destructing humanity.
Novelists, too, seem to be working in this mythic space.
Definitely. Joyce's Ulysses, mapping ancient myth onto modern Dublin. The magical realists, Borges, Grass, Calvino, Carter, Rushdie, deliberately blurring the lines between logos and mythos. Even George Orwell's 1984 Big Brother, doublethink it functions as a powerful contemporary myth about state control and psychological manipulation. These godless mythologies, as Armstrong calls them, they grapple with the same intractable human problems, maybe reminding us implicitly of our sacred numinous value, even without invoking God.
She mentions Conrad's Heart of Darkness.
As a kind of hero's quest gone tragically wrong, Kurtz is a potential shaman who gets stuck, regresses into savagery. The horror, the failure of the mythic journey in the face of primal darkness.
And Thomas Mann's The Magic Mountain.
The sanatorium in Davos as a modern shrine of initiatory rites, a place of confronting illness and death. But the hero's quest is ultimately inward-looking, maybe sterile, ending as he goes off to fight in World War I.
Malcolm Lowry's Under the Volcano.
The alcoholic consul, as a kind of broken everyman on a desperate, self-destructive quest through Mexico on the Day of the Dead. Everything feels loaded with fateful mythic significance. It captures the world's own drunkenness on the brink of WWII, humans unleashing forces they can't control. There's a deep compassion there, even amidst the nihilism.
So reading a novel,
Sure.
it can be more than just entertainment. It can function like myth.
Armstrong strongly suggests so. It can be a kind of meditation, a transformative practice. It breaks down barriers of space and time, connects you with other minds, other lives. It extends our sympathies, teaches compassion.
She quotes the critic George Steiner.
Saying that serious art makes an aggressive, transformative summons. It invades our privacy, queries the last privacies of our existence, and issues a command: change your life.
Wow. So artists, writers, they're taking on a kind of priestly role.
In a sense, trying to bring fresh insight to our lost and damaged world, using the power of narrative, imagery, and symbol, the tools of myth to help us see ourselves and our world anew.
What a journey. From Neanderthal burials, through the agricultural revolution, the axial age, the rise of reason, the supposed death of myth, and now it's a potential rebirth in art and literature. The big takeaway seems to be, myth isn't about whether something literally happened. It's about whether it helps us live more deeply, more intensely, find meaning, face mortality.
Exactly. We can't escape myth because we are fundamentally myth-making creatures. It's how we navigate the world. The crucial thing is the quality of our myths. Do they foster life, compassion, connection, or division and destruction? We need myths today, perhaps more than ever, that are infused with that axial spirit of compassion, respect for the sacredness of all life, and a new, maybe urgent spiritual connection to the earth itself.
So as you, listening, reflect on all this. Maybe ask yourself, what myths are you living by? Are they conscious or unconscious? And maybe more importantly, are they helping you live more richly, more meaningfully? Or are they perhaps just stories you tell yourself? Something to think about.